is another edition of our Futurist Series. So to all the students and parents and working professionals out there who's interested in what Hyperion does, what coding is about, we have a very interesting guest today. He's the CTO of a company called Kandua. So Kandua is one of the newest sort of really, making waves in the market as a tech startup in South Africa, Mr. Arjun Khoosal. Arjun, maybe you can give the peeps an idea of who you are and what Kandua does.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. So, yeah, thanks for that intro. And great to connect with all of you remotely today. So Kandua is a marketplace for home services. So anything that you can think of that needs to be done in your home, whether it's plumbing, building, carpentry, painting, all that type of stuff. We are a marketplace that facilitates you being connected with someone who can actually do that service and who's been vetted to do that service, to the standard that you would expect. And on the other side of things, of course, we connect our tradespeople to opportunities. So we basically see ourselves as an API into a sector of the economy that is has always been very disorganized and opaque and difficult to engage with. Whether you're a customer looking to get something done, whether you are a business that could add immense value to this, hazy, shaded kind of part of the economy of all these independent plumbers running around in buckies, and whether you're a training institute who's trying to connect their graduates and education to industry. It's been very difficult to engage with. So this industry really needs an API. We're building that API, and basically our mission is to use data and technology to shorten the distance between these kind of plumbers, carpenters, whatever, from having a skill and then making a living from it. So we want to shorten that distance, and so yeah, that's what we do. And we currently operate in 3 cities, and we are the biggest marketplace for maintenance and renovation in South Africa.
Man, it's one of those things, just from my personal perspective. I think we know each other from a while ago, and when I first heard about Kandua, it's just so nice because it's I would call it like a triple win situation: inclusion into the formalized economy, which is great. You're providing more options for people out there, which, I mean, to be fair, anybody looking for any one of those tradesmen that you're looking for, it sometimes can be a bit complicated, So yeah, and what the work that you guys are doing, and what I've been reading about you guys in the market, it's just so great to see that you guys are taking that step, and it's just so needed. So that's really amazing. You mentioned words like you mentioned words like API, right? So we want to try and keep it interesting for the people involved. What is an API?
So an API is, and it's funny how many times I've been asked this question. So luckily, I had a lot of practice of it. Let's hope it serves me well. But an API is basically, do you know how humans talk to each other via speaking English or via Google Meets? This is what we are using to communicate, but usually we would just use a language and we'd speak to each other or write to each other. When we talk to computers, when humans talk to computers, they use programming languages, okay? Or they use an interface, which is, when you click on things, type things. When you get computers talking to other computers, they talk via an API. So that's how I would phrase it from a very high level perspective. So an API is basically offers a really easy way for another system to be able to interact with, use, and also inform your system.
Nice. So I want to deep dive into the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Arjun Khoosal himself, right? So I got a couple of questions that I'm going to shoot through your way. Let's try and understand. So from a tech perspective, right? So if you could briefly maybe tell us your story specifically and how tech education informed your career choices.
Yeah, so that's quite an easy story to tell because the summary of it is to a very huge extent. So I can definitely go into detail there. I was lucky enough to be at a school where they offered IT at a fairly young age. So I kind of knew that programming was a thing, and also kind of figured out that I was pretty good at it. And that was really lucky and a formative moment. If I didn't experience that, who knows what trajectory my life would have taken. Maybe I would have probably been an actuary or something like that. Look, I actually started studying that at some point, but more about that later. But yeah, really, that was a really formative, thing in my life, and it was definitely my favorite subject at school. Even though we used to just play computer games the whole time, especially because we used to play computer games the whole time, but also the subject matter was interesting and it was great. And then in university, I thought to myself that, I heard, what on the street was that, if you're good at maths and you wanted to have a great career, you should do actuarial science. And so, yeah, I got into that, but I definitely made sure to take computer science as an elective as well. And as my time went on, I realized that, even though I had a bursary for actuarial science, I realized that, I love programming. Programming is hard, and I can be really useful if I just, I'm not going to drop this thing. And so eventually I ended up, I changed my degree on the basis of that, on the basis of my love for programming, essentially. Without that, I wouldn't have. And sacrificed my bursary, which I was lucky enough to be able to do. Actually, sorry, I managed to maintain my bursary. But I had to do a whole lot of, massaging to get that to happen. But yeah, so, and then, I ended up majoring in math, stats, and computer science. And then looking forward, I wanted to, again, I knew I loved programming. It was definitely, it was the thing that was always, it came to me easily and whatever. So I wanted to continue doing that. And so then I got into computational biology, which was another facet to program within. So basically, I always wanted to use programming and feel really useful doing so. And I didn't quite know what that would feel like. So I thought maybe it would be in the academic world, solving problems around genetics and, providing better medications, vaccines, all that type of thing, curing diseases. I mean, that sounds great, and it is great. But I found through that, that wasn't my favorite thing, because while I was busy studying, doing my master's, I actually realized that I started this side project type thing with a couple of friends, and it quickly became way more exciting to write code in that way, and to imagine all the ways in which it could be used and affect people's lives immediately. Like the extent and immediacy of impact that I felt programming in that environment was by far the most I'd ever felt. And that inspired me to drop out of my master's and do this thing full time, which was about 6 years ago. And and then, it's also probably worth mentioning that I think I'm really passionate about is using both teaching and programming. And so as such, I guess somewhat coincidentally, but also somewhat not, I also, my path intersected with you guys at Hyperion for a while, when I was doing my master's. That was part of the journey I was on, where I was like, there's actually I can find ways to be useful outside of academia, and this was one of the things. So I've always wanted to teach people to code and stuff, and I did a bunch of workshops and stuff for you guys, created some content, that was all key formative parts of understanding my place in the world and how I could be useful with my programming. And so that's basically my story with that.
That's so interesting, man. You touch on so many great topics there, and I think one of them is like the motivation to be a coder. And obviously you wanted to problem solve and change the world, and you mentioned that you had an affinity for maths and science, but also just like invigorating your own internal passion and realizing that you can build and change and use code to do that. Very, very awesome. In terms of like a tangible or the practical use case of code in the Kandua business sense, right? Maybe you can give us some idea of how important is tech to your current business and the role of your tech team.
Yeah, it's very, very. We consider ourselves a tech company, right? So if you think of and I think, yeah, I think in a lot of places, and these tend to be the places which are struggling more than the places that are surging to the top 10 richest companies in the world, which, I mean, as everyone kind of knows now, is like tech companies, and often the difference there is the way the tech is viewed. Like, no disrespect to, for example, accounting, but our accounting is not going to be a fundamental reason for our success. We just need to make sure we get it done and that it doesn't sink the ship. Whereas programming is our engine. That is how we move forward, and that is how we have an impact. So I think that shift is one that any future-proof company would need to orientate themselves around. And so for us, it's very much like that. And one of the interesting things I noticed when seeing some other environments, and actually a surprising amount of them, is when in a company, people often talk about, you hear engineers talking about business wants X, business needs this, and that to me is very jarring. And I mean, it's not that I've not made a rule or anything at Kandua. We don't talk about it like that, but that's not how we see it. And the way we talk about it is a function of that. Is that tech and the business are the same thing. Like, tech is in the same way that the people are the company, right?
Yeah.
The tech is also the company. Like, and in every facet of what the business does, are all facets that programming and technology should be slipping into and optimizing, making it more scalable, and technology is so important in doing that, right? I mean, there's literally not a single every part. If I look at our business, the only parts of our business where tech isn't deeply embedded are parts where we really want to embed the tech, but we just can't move fast enough, and you have to be focused. Like, it is
right.
so pervasive and so important in enabling everything. And that makes for a very interesting, time for me because it's very stressful. But it's also a great opportunity to make a big difference in a company that is trying to make a big difference. So in that way, it's great, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That's how I see it. And even our engineers, they embed themselves deeply in all the different facets of the company. So it's there's a lot of direct interaction with people from all different teams, because part of tech having reach into all these places mean the people inside tech also having reach into all these places, and there's got to be a lot of symbiosis and shared context in that way. So yeah.
Awesome. It's so interesting to see how you position your company as a tech company, and the influence of it is the plumbers and the handymans and the carpenters that you work with, right? You have, through your business, introduced tech to their business, which as a plumber, you don't necessarily see or think like how important tech is to my business, but you creating that link directly. So even in industries where you wouldn't assume tech would be, primordial, it's becoming ever so important.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's also
it's funny because yeah, exactly. And I think those industries where we think of it, tech being in a primordial state, which is like this industry, right? I mean, that's actually why I think this is a great place to apply myself and ourselves, is because this is an neglected industry. So either tech is there or should be there. And that's my view of it. And I mean, there's many industries like ours where when you think of plumbers, you never think of technology. I mean, those are maybe some of the most or technophobic sector of society, and that's why there's no products for them. That's why there's a huge opportunity to unlock them by paying close attention to these people and building solutions for them. So yeah, that's how I see that.
Awesome. You also touched on something else earlier. It's a fundamental part, like what is the company, is tech, but also another part is the people, right? So when we look at it, how do you see in-demand careers changing, and how important is learning to code for that future scenario?
Yeah, I think I'll start off with a part of my answer that's not really related. That is not specifically related to in-demand careers, and I won't go into it much more. But just to say that learning to code is not only useful for that; it's also really useful for teaching you to think and communicate well, because it forces you to communicate in a very structured way. And I think that's and break down problems in a way that if you look at your other subjects that you did at school, I think it's much more engaging and works that much more, which I think is useful across the board. But okay, speaking more specifically about careers and the extent to which it is good for, I guess, if you want to be in an in-demand profession and have an in-demand place in society, should you learn to code? For sure. I mean, it's I think, and I can split it into two like broad ways of thinking about it. The first is that, as I think we spoke about earlier, technology, if it is not everywhere, will be everywhere. What's that phrase? Software is eating the world. So that is happening, right? So in the future, every company is going to have technology in every facet. And whether or not you are the person who is actually spending your day writing code, or whether you are just someone, as I mentioned, like for example, in one of our teams who is engaging with programmers who are writing code, it gives you that shared context and that cross-domainality from actually understanding what goes into writing code is something that will massively enable you in any of these environments, right? Because you often find that there's a schism between those who are writing the code and the rest of the company. And that's always disaster, wastage, inefficiency. And if you can be one of those people who can cross that divide, that's gold. And you will be remunerated accordingly, I'm sure. And from the other perspective, like learning to code because you want to spend your day coding. I mean, it's interesting that if I look at the trend over the time from when I started, studying computer science at university to now, and the way that programming as a career has evolved over that time. I mean, it's so much more obvious to everyone that it is the place to be. If for example today I told my parents, listen, I want to be a computer, and this is part of the conversation. These are some of the conversations that actually made me want to do actual science. Because people were like, computer science, what is that? Programming, I don't know. It sounds, I don't know, like you some IT support guy or like, I don't know. And that impression, the how that impression has shifted to today when someone is proud to say, I'm studying programming, because everyone knows like these people are critical and really in demand, is very palpable. And that rate of change, I don't think I can point to another career really objectively that I think has undergone that tangible change in how in demand it is. And then over a longer term, I mean, the argument's interesting because some people say that as we get better and better wielding technology, automate more and more careers, and so there's obviously jobs in that. But some of the jobs that are being automated away are also the jobs of programmers. So whereas before it would take you a team of 15 programmers to put up a website in 4 months, and I'm talking about like 30 years ago or something. Now you can do that with 0 programmers and clicking around. So there is that shift too. But I think if you net out the different forces, I think, and if you also just look at empirically what the trend is at the moment, and I don't think it's just a South African trend. I think it's a global trend. The world is looking great for those who can program. I mean, the options are great, and it's super fulfilling. This is a sidebar, but I've got to throw it in there. Is that it's also just super forgetting about the financial aspect. It's so useful to be able to think. I mean, it's so satisfying to know how useful you can be with pretty much no other resource. There's very few other things that you can do sitting by yourself and create value in the world. And create a new product that's really useful, and it's also a really satisfying career to get into, from the perspective of if I think one of the inherent desires we all have is we want to become masters of a trade, become really good at something, devote your life to the purpose of being the ultimate kung fu master or whatever. Programming allows an incredible depth of expertise and mastery and it's incredibly, there's a lot of great senseis out there, online and offline, to guide you on this really long, infinite journey that's branching in so many different ways, that it's incredibly satisfying from that point as well. So I think it's an amazing career, and I would not be my younger sister, who's 11 years younger than me. I don't know to what extent I have brainwashed her, but she's also taking computer science now. I hope I didn't brainwash her. I hope she saw it for herself. But yeah, that's how I see the world.
I really like the way that you broke it down into like value propositions for both people interested in becoming developers themselves, but also individuals who want to learn those critical thinking skills, want to be able to structure their thought processes a little bit more efficiently. You articulated really nice, like the use cases for that. To be fair, I think when you spoke about the multifaceted elements of learning how to code, it's intimidating, right? It's intimidating for somebody who wants to start learning how to code. What's your recommendations for somebody like that? Somebody, for example, who is already on the path to a career, maybe doesn't have the option to pivot and become a developer off the cuff. They have earning responsibilities. How would you recommend somebody start that journey if it's so inevitable?
So I think often people think that there's that and this is true, that there's so many different languages and so much you can learn within each language. There's literally not a single and the truth is that there's not a single person in the world who knows everything about every language, or even everything about a language even. And really the question becomes, one, how general purpose is the language that you're trying to learn? But two, and this is an important one, and I think it's this is always what I think is maybe underweighted in the way people consider diving into code, is the best way of going about it, I think, is and this is how I think we should always be orientating ourselves when we do write code. So I think it's also great practice for that orientation. Is what is a problem that's immediately in front of me? Like, what is the thing that I think is annoying to me in my process or my life or in other people's lives that I want to write code to solve? And then what is the easiest thing I can learn to solve that problem?
Right.
And if you orientate your learning in that way, you will both be able to solve the problem which you're trying to solve, which is ultimately the point, right? I think that's an important thing to remember, that like you're learning how to use a tool to solve a problem. It's not a tool in and of itself. So that's important, right? So what is it? So first you solve the problem. Secondly, you've gotten better at using tools to solve problems, which is a skill. And thirdly, you're much more likely, I think, to complete your learning because there's some end in sight. You're like, hey, I want to solve that problem. And when you're learning, you're thinking, okay, this is how I can use it. I think that. So I think that's important. So and it might be tricky to know. Okay, this is the problem I have, and this is the what language should I be learning, and what should my approach be? But I think programming is one of the things that has the best online community for in getting those answers, and obviously you guys are a great part of that. But yeah, if you Google stuff, you'll get the answers. Like there are people with the answers, and the answers are already on the internet. And another cool thing about this industry is that I guess as the series has kind of also been evidence, has evidence and will continue to evidence, is that as programmers we are pretty passionate people who love sharing and helping each other. That's part of the, I think, function of the mastery element that this profession has a lot of richness in. And so you'll get the answers if you're dedicated and you want to you will find the answers out there. So yeah, that's what and the way to find dedication, look at a real problem. That's the summary of my answer.
That's amazing. I really like the way that you position that. If we had to take a shift now and move away from the individuals and start looking at businesses, right? Because besides the problem solving, there's also the element of career trajectory, financial compensation. From a business perspective, if we had to look at considering how everything is changing and businesses are digitizing and dramatically changing themselves, what hiring insights would you consider to equip your business to sort of weather any disruption? Specifically with regard to tech.
Yeah, so there are three things that mean that you look for in your hiring process, right? The one is that you want to ensure that everyone who is good, you have a very high rate of finding them and detecting them and not letting any slip through your fingers. The second is that you want to ensure that anyone who isn't good, you don't accidentally identify them as good and hire them, because that's obviously not good for your company. And the third thing you look for is you don't want to spend a lot of time in achieving those other two outcomes, especially with hiring for tech, because it is such an in-demand career and an in-demand kind of profession to hire from. It's very important to optimize these things to a great extent. And then the other thing that's important, obviously, is having a wide funnel of applicants who are streaming into your company. So I think, if I look at one of the things that makes tech different to other kind of industries, so although it's very difficult to find people, it is much easier to check if someone is good, right? I think we have to rely much less on CVs because the proof is in the pudding, and you can actually tell someone to make the pudding and taste it, which is in a lot of other industries is much harder to do, right? So you can evaluate whether a candidate is good if you design your process really attentively to the goals, so that it doesn't take a lot of time on the candidate, doesn't take a lot of time on you, and give them some kind of pre-filtration kind of take-home test, which is what we do. And then interestingly, we do have a novel approach to our final phase interview, which I think serves us very well, because as a startup, we are somewhat we have as I described earlier, tech is so centrally important to the success of our company, and we're a small company. We really can't afford to be making any bad hires, so we highly index into that part of the problem. And the best way that I found of doing that is actually taking half a day off of my time and building something together with the candidate to see what it feels like and how their brain works when they reason about problems. How do they collaborate? How do they communicate? And these are all important signals about whether or not someone is a good hire. And it's often difficult. You often might miss on some of them if you don't spend a lot of time in an environment that simulates the working environment very closely. And so that's what we do. And I think it's proved quite useful. It does take quite a bit of time. And then from the perspective of getting a lot of candidates in, I think that's where, that's always going to be a challenge because of how, in demand the profession is, which is great for people studying it. Makes it life a bit harder for us. But it's, the way I see it is, leverage online platforms. Like you guys have a lot of coders that are coming through your ranks. How can we leverage that? And, I've had several conversations and, use you guys that way for that. And then it's also like when I think of hiring and attracting, in order to ensure you have great engineers, a paradigm I like to keep in mind is like there's two ways of going about that, right? One is to have really far-reaching recruiters that are really good at contacting loads of people and pulling them towards you, right? That's one way, but it's much more expensive and less elegant, I would say, than as a company developing a magnet that great people hear about you and want to come to you and want to work there. And the way you, I think, do that is one, make it a great place to work, like make it so that your engineers are, you and in a lot of ways, like just be attentive in the way you structure your company and the way people, the way it intersects with people's lives. And that's obviously very important for more than just hiring. So that's why it's a very elegant solution. Like be really good there. And then also encourage your participation in the community, like just, have some kind of way of people understanding your company and allow that magnet to draw people in. So I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of hiring in this day and age. And I think that's something that we will also be more active in trying to do in the future.
You mentioned so many great things, and the way that you structured those 3 points as well. You can apply that to whether you're a startup, whether you're a big corporate, whether you deal with recruiters or not. I think you've left us a lot to think about there. I've taken up I feel, a
Cool.
lot of your time, and you've left us with some solid nuggets. I just want to say a big heartfelt thank you, man, brother. I really appreciate your time, and this was really great.
Yeah, I also enjoy. I mean, firstly, I enjoy talking about something that is really interesting and has such a big potential to change things, and also, yeah, I enjoy hopefully being useful to people. Good luck, everyone. And yeah, I mean, if you ever if anyone watching this ever has some particular questions about our company or about maybe some kind of technology that you feel like you would like to learn about from us or anything like that, I'm always, as you can maybe infer, very happy to chat about this type of stuff. And Sham, no worries at all. I mean, yeah, about taking the time. It was a pleasure to give it, and happy to connect in the future.
Yeah, awesome, man. Look, we I think with COVID, it's so difficult right now, right? But we want to be having more physical graduation events where we have just a whole bunch of our community and developers getting involved. So yeah, dude, I'm definitely gonna knock on your door there, and I will hope to see you soon in the real world.
Cool. See you.